Great. Welcome everyone to the Qualifying Advanced Energy Project Credit Program Information Applicant webinar. I'm Allie Riley, a member of DOE's 48C program team. Before we get started, I would like to note that this webinar is being recorded. As a participant, your audio and video have been turned off. If you have difficulties related to technology, for example, if you cannot hear a speaker or see the presentation slides, we recommend you exit the webinar and re-enter. Closed captions are available for this event. If you'd like to view the captions, please enable them using the closed caption icon at the bottom left of your WebEx screen. The webinar, as we mentioned, will be recorded and will be posted on our 48C landing page. A few more notices before we jump into the content. Please note, no new information other than provided in the IRS guidance will be discussed in the webinar. There are no particular advantages or disadvantages to the application evaluation process with respect to participating on the webinar today, and your participation is completely voluntary. All applicants are strongly encouraged to carefully read the IRS Notice 2024-36, including the appendices, and adhere to the stated submission requirements. This presentation summarizes the contents of the notice. If there are any inconsistencies between the notice and this presentation or statements from DOE personnel, the notice is the controlling document, and applicants should rely on the notice language and seek clarification by submitting a question. There will be no Q&A section of today's webinar, so please submit any programmatic questions to the 48C questions@hq.doe.gov mailbox, which we also will flag at the end of the presentation. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Julia Sicardo, the Director of the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains.
Thank you so much, Allie. Thank you all so much for being here today to learn more about round 2 of the Qualifying Advanced Energy Project Credit Program, which you may know as the 48C program. As Allie mentioned, my name is Julia Sicardo, and I am the Director of the Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains Office, or MESC. MESC is one of the new offices at the Department of Energy focused on infrastructure deployment. Our office deploys catalytic capital to restart the flywheel of American manufacturing, rebuild secure supply chains for our country's energy sector, and ensure both have the skilled workforce they need to construct, operate, and maintain all that we need for a reliable, resilient energy future. All of our investments in manufacturing capacity and workforce are underpinned by our supply chain analytics, which leverage the network of our 17 national labs at the department. The success of all of DOE's deployment offices relies on MESC's success in making America's energy supply chain stronger, more reliable, and more resilient. Our work includes a close partnership with the IRS to implement the program we're here today to discuss, the 48C program, which is a $10 billion total competitive tax credit program that covers 3 areas. First, clean energy manufacturing and recycling. Second, critical materials processing, refining, and recycling. And third, industrial greenhouse gas emissions reductions. This is a competitive tax credit. What does that mean? MESC has an initial role in reviewing applications and making recommendations. We review applications based off of our usual criteria. Is there a strong business plan? Is the company thinking thoughtfully about where the workforce is going to come from? How to build and expand in a way that represents and maintains their license to operate? How is the company thinking about integrating diverse suppliers and detailing all of this in their community benefit plan? Depending on the category of the application, is there a material impact on manufacturing capacity and employment? Or is there a material impact on greenhouse gas emissions? We take a look at all of this, make a recommendation to the IRS, and then IRS makes a final determination. In this program, in order to get the full tax credit of 30% on your investment, projects must pay prevailing wage and meet apprenticeship standards, ensuring high quality, good paying jobs and worker training. As we will discuss more in depth, the program also ensures that we're prioritizing the energy communities that have long powered our nation and have largely been left behind in the energy transition. As a result, at least 40% of the total $10 billion for this program will be allocated to projects in communities with closed coal plants and known as energy communities. These are communities that have been impacted by closed coal mines or coal plants at any point in the past 20 years at the census tract level. And we have a map of these communities on our website, and we'll discuss more about this as we go forward. Of the $4 billion of tax credits that we allocated in round one, 1.5 billion supported projects in those historic energy communities in line with the 40% carve out for these communities. I'd also like to emphasize that we've very much heard you, and we've made some very important efforts to simplify the application process, starting out with the concept paper. What is the concept paper? The concept paper is where you all give us an indication of what your project is about. And it may be confusing to do that, especially for first-time applicants. So we've actually created a fill-in-the-box template. So you know exactly what we're looking for, what information we need. And this is the first stage to actually start the application for this tax credit. When you submit a concept paper, which is a required step in order to submit a full application, you get feedback on that information that you supply to us. And you get that feedback before the application is due. So you can improve or fill in any gaps before you're submitting the full application. There are going to be a couple other differences in this second round of the 48C program, including the competitive priorities. So including the particular segments of the supply chain and particular markets that we're very focused on. And the team will chat through that. So I will leave you in their extremely capable hands to talk through those changes, as well as some additional details on how the 48C program works, and most importantly, how to apply. Before I leave you, I will share a few more comments to give context on what this program means and why it is important to us. 48C is truly part of a broad industrial competitiveness strategy from the administration. We know that clean energy represents a $23 trillion global economic opportunity, which is essentially a new industrial revolution. Accordingly, America has begun one of the most significant economic transformations that we are going to see in our lifetimes to compete and win in that global marketplace. A shift toward the future not only powered by clean energy, but using advanced products stamped made in America, built and installed by American workers in proud American communities. And we're very proud that 48C is going to play a role in that transition. It's those aspirations for greater energy security, deeper, long-lasting investments in our communities, high-quality jobs with good wages, and obtaining the many other economic, equity, and environmental benefits of this industrial revolution for America that we encourage you to bring forward in your applications. We can't wait to see the next round of projects that you all bring forward, and we thank you very much for being here and for your interest. And Ali, I will hand back over to you.
Great, thank you, Julia. Now Sarma is going to provide a quick rundown of our agenda today, and we'll pass it off to Matt Doyle to jump into the content.
Thank you, Ali. My name is Sharma Khowali. I'm a program manager on the 48C program. In today's webinar, we will cover on the 48C program overview and the round 2 guidance, which was announced on April 29th. Then we will go through the eligibility, Appendix A, and the application process, Appendix B, and energy communities for round 2 as Appendix C. And then we will kind of talk through some of the guidance in developing a strong concept paper submission for round 2, and a list of resources and questions. Then we plan to conduct this webinar in about 1 hour. And like Ali mentioned earlier, these slides and the webinar will be posted on the 48C landing page on the coming days. Now it's my pleasure to pass it on to Matt Doyle from Department of Treasury to go over the program overview.
Thank you, Sarma. So my name is Matt Doyle. I'm a senior advisor at the Treasury Department responsible for leading Treasury's work on 48C and a number of other clean energy tax credits. First, I want to thank the Department of Energy team for hosting this webinar and the very close, productive partnership that we have with them between Treasury, the IRS, and the Department of Energy. So just as a little bit of background, first, in 2009, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act included the Advanced Energy Project Credit, or 48C, as a first of its kind 30% investment tax credit to provide incentives to build, re-equip, or expand the facilities necessary to produce a new generation of clean energy technologies. And following the initial success of that program, the Inflation Reduction Act was enacted in 2002 and provided $10 billion in new funding for the Qualifying Advanced Energy Project Credit Program, or the 48C program as we know it today. If you can move on to the next slide, there's a couple of things I want to make sure to highlight. First, the 48C program provides a tax incentive. It is competitively allocated to qualifying projects in the 3 areas you see here. We'll discuss more about each of those areas in a moment, but it is open to all project sizes, and the amount of funding allocated to each category is not predetermined. As previously mentioned, of the total of $10 billion in tax credits to be allocated across 2 different rounds of the Inflation Reduction Act funding, at least $4 billion must go to qualifying projects in 48C designated energy communities that have been impacted by the closure of a coal mine or coal-fired power plant. If you take a look at the graphic in the bottom corner, you can see how 48C funding is divided across these 2 rounds. In the first round, IRS allocated approximately $4 billion of tax credits. And in the second round, there will be an additional up to $6 billion allocated, with approximately $2.5 billion going to projects in 48C designated energy communities. In April, Treasury and the IRS issued a notice that explained the requirements for qualifying projects, giving examples of projects that could qualify, providing a detailed description of the application process, requirements, and criteria used to evaluate concept papers, which are essentially a project proposal, and applications. As previously mentioned, to receive the full value of the 48C credit, projects must meet prevailing wage and apprenticeship standards. It's also worth noting that tax-exempt and government entities can also benefit from certain clean energy investment and production tax credits using new options enabled by the Inflation Reduction Act. Elective pay, also known as direct pay, makes certain clean energy tax credits, including 48C, effectively refundable to applicable entities like tax-exempt and government entities. So as we move on to the next slide, you can see 48C's scope and its expansion under the Inflation Reduction Act. 48C aims to strengthen U.S. industrial competitiveness and clean energy supply chains, especially in coal communities, as the nation builds out a net zero economy. It does this by expanding U.S. manufacturing capacity, creating high-quality jobs for supplying and recycling clean energy technologies, reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the American industrial base, increasing the resilience of secure domestic supply chains for critical minerals and materials that serve as inputs for clean energy technology production. And to accomplish this, we have these 3 different categories. Clean energy manufacturing and recycling projects are those that are re-equipping, expanding, or establishing industrial or manufacturing facilities for production or recycling of clean energy and energy efficiency technologies. Then there's critical minerals processing, refining, and recycling projects to re-equip, expand, or establish industrial facilities to process, refine, or recycle critical materials, and industrial decarbonization projects. This category received a new name for the second round of the 48C program, and it re-equips industrial and manufacturing facilities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by at least 20%. Each of these areas is essential to building a clean energy economy, tackling climate change, creating jobs, and strengthening our nation's energy security. As we move to the next slide, you can see that there is significant interest in 48C in round 1. Over 100 projects across 35 states were selected to accelerate domestic clean energy manufacturing and reduce greenhouse gas emissions at industrial facilities. The clean energy and manufacturing and recycling category had $2.7 billion, or approximately 67% of tax credit allocations. You can see, there are a number of different industries covered here, including in hydrogen, grid components, EV, solar, wind, including offshore wind. So a good selection of projects from that particular category. The critical materials recycling, processing, and refining had 800 million in tax credit allocations, or about 20% of the round one tax credit allocations. Again, variety of projects of different sizes and scope were selected. And then there was the third category, which we are now calling industrial decarbonization, with 500 million in tax credit allocations selected from a variety of projects that implement decarbonization measures across diverse sectors, such as those you see here: chemicals, biofuels, glass, iron and steel, automotive manufacturing, building materials, just to name a few. Moving on to the next slide, I just want to quickly cover the round two timeline before turning it back over to some of my colleagues at the Department of Energy. So interested applicants have been able to begin preparing since round two guidance was released by Treasury and IRS in April. Currently, applicants can go online and create accounts as users. The 48C application portal will start accepting round two concept papers on May 22nd, 2024, as you see here. The deadline for submitting concept papers will be June 21st at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I should note, all applicants who applied but did not receive an allocation in round one can apply again. Round one was, significantly oversubscribed, but these applicants can apply again. They must submit a concept paper and full application, however, in round two to be considered. By the fall of 2024, the 48C portal will begin accepting full applications from those who submitted concept papers. And then based on a merit review process, DOE will make recommendations to the IRS, who will then determine which applicants receive an allocation by January 15th of next year. So with that, I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining. Thank you again to our colleagues at the Department of Energy for hosting. And I'm going to turn it back over to Allie Riley at the Department of Energy. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Matt. Really appreciate the overview. So we're going to jump into kind of a quick summary of what changed between round one and round two in our guidance document. So here is a summary of our updates to the round two guidance. I just want to flag what you'd seen, and I think several of us have mentioned that the guidance document, there is a notice which was issued by Treasury, and then there are two other documents. One contains Appendix A and Appendix B, and then the third is Appendix C. So please go in and look at all of those documents to understand the latest on 48C. So the updates that we made are across these different appendix documents, which I just mentioned. For Appendix A, we made updates to the description of eligible projects, including clarifying the language based on questions we received in round one, and also adding an additional technology area, which I'll speak to on the next slide. Energy intensive materials that have a substantially lower carbon intensity when compared to an appropriate industry specific benchmark are now eligible in round two. In Appendix B, we made updates to the supply chain priorities for clean energy manufacturing projects. We updated the merit review criteria to provide additional clarity. And then with respect to submission requirements, we updated the concept paper requirements, which Julia spoke to in her opening statement. We'll dig into a bit more in succeeding slides. And we also clarified the required appendix submission materials for applications. Appendix C lists all of the census tracts that are designated 48C energy communities. This is a definitive list of what is considered an energy community under the 48C provision. This was updated with data through April 1st of this year. And as a result of that, there are an additional 130 new census tracts that count as energy communities. And additionally, we updated kind of across the board to improve readability for you all, and also, as Matt mentioned, renamed the formerly GHG emission reduction category to industrial decarbonization. So the first update you'll see in Appendix A, and we strongly recommend that folks go and review the appendix itself for additional details. but a new technology area is eligible, and it is on the priority list, which I'll speak to on the next slide. So energy intensive materials that have a substantially lower carbon intensity when compared to an appropriate industry specific benchmark are eligible. These include projects that are not limited to projects that expand, re-equip, or establish facilities for manufacturing or recycling of low carbon cement, concrete or components, low carbon iron and steel, low carbon aluminum, low carbon chemicals, low carbon pulp or paper, and low carbon glass. To be eligible, materials must not be derived from primary feedstocks such as palm fatty acid distillates or fossil fuels. Projects should reduce carbon intensity on a life cycle basis by at least 30% compared to an appropriate industry-specific benchmark. And for projects at existing facilities, they must re-equip or expand their production lines to produce these materials or increase capacity respectively. So wanted to highlight this, but also encourage folks to check out the Appendix A to see if their project would qualify under this category. The other update that I'll highlight is the round 2 program priorities. So this is for clean energy manufacturing projects. This is also in, this is in Appendix B of the new guidance. So you'll see the priorities listed here at kind of a high level order. In the guidance, we have more detail about subcomponents and kind of what we're prioritizing for this round. So please refer to Appendix B, Section 2.3 for the complete list to see if your project falls under one of these categories. I just want to note that the production of some products under this section may be eligible for tax credits under 45X, and receiving an allocation under 48C may preclude any applicant from receiving tax credits under that program. So please consider that when deciding whether or not to submit a 48C concept paper this round. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, the low carbon and energy intensive materials must at least 30% lower when compared to an appropriate industry specific benchmark. So again, please review the guidance for additional details. And with that, I'll pass it over to Sarma. We'll speak to the other round 2 updates on future slides.
Thanks, Ali. So first we will talk about Appendix A, which describes the eligible projects under 48C for round 2. If I can go to the next slide. Okay. The scope of eligible projects under the clean energy manufacturing and recycling projects, this list is available in the appendix. I'm not going to read through the whole list, but essentially the properties that are designed to be used to produce energy from sun, water, wind, geothermal, or other renewable sources, fuel cells, energy storage systems and components, electric grid modernization equipment or components, and carbon oxide emission capture, remove, or use or sequestration, CCUS projects. And then we have equipment designed to refine, electrolyze, or blend any fuel, chemical, or product which is renewable or low carbon and low emission projects. So we have the list of all these eligible projects which are outlined in the Appendix A. All applicants are encouraged to read the notice, Appendix A of Notice 2024-36, that is the round 2 notice for details on eligible projects for round 2. Okay. Similarly, if I can go to the next slide. Similarly, for the industrial decarbonization projects, which is renamed from the round 1 greenhouse gas emission reduction projects. The eligible projects include low or zero carbon process heat systems, carbon capture, transport, utilization and storage systems, energy efficiency and reduction in waste from industrial processes, any other industrial technology designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as determined by the Secretary. For the critical materials projects, that's the third category under 48C. The currently effective list of critical materials as determined by U.S. Geological Survey that is available on the 48C landing page and other places. And any additional critical materials as determined by the Secretary of Energy, that's also posted on the energy.gov critical materials landing page. So that's where you can find out whether the critical materials which you are proposing as part of your project are eligible under 48C. Okay. If I can go to the next slide. For determining the eligibility, like we mentioned, there are three main categories: clean energy manufacturing and recycling. Second one is critical materials processing, refining, and recycling. And third one is industrial decarbonization projects. For all these project categories, the guidance, which includes the notice and all the appendices, they define the scope of eligible products and provide examples of eligible projects and provide examples of ineligible projects. So all applicants are highly encouraged to kind of go through the notice and the appendices thoroughly to ensure that the project they are proposing is eligible under 48C. And applicants who are applying for round 2, they must indicate which advanced energy project category their project will qualify under when submitting a concept paper. If you submit a concept paper under the clean energy manufacturing and recycling, that is the category that concept paper will be evaluated under with the rest of the concept papers that fall under. So you have to make sure that you're applying under the right category for us to kind of do the merit review on that among other concept papers in that category. Okay, if I can go to the next slide. So next 3 slides are graphical representation of understanding the eligible projects under 48C and some of the examples of ineligible projects. Like I mentioned, applicants should read the notice and the appendices to ensure that what the project they are proposing for tax credits meets the eligibility requirements as laid out in the guidance documents. Under clean energy manufacturing and recycling projects, the eligible projects, the facilities that manufacture or recycle eligible product, they should be either re-equipping or expanding or establishing a facility that will produce more of the eligible product. The projects which are not eligible under this category are the ones which produce an ineligible product, including facilities producing fuels or chemicals. The exception is the facilities which are producing a chemical that is a component of an eligible 48C product. Also not eligible under 48C are the facilities which are deploying rather than manufacturing or recycling the eligible product, such as in a power generation project. Next slide, please. Similarly, for the critical materials projects, the eligible to re-equip, expand, or establish a facility for the processing, refining, or recycling of eligible critical materials. We talked about the eligible critical materials, where a list of those eligible critical materials can be found. The eligible projects under this category would be the projects that process and refine raw materials and recycle end-of-life products, waste streams, and other source materials into critical materials. Under this category, under 48C, mining or extraction of critical materials is not eligible. Also, similarly, manufacturing of derivative products using those critical materials as inputs are also not eligible. Those projects, those types of projects may qualify under the clean energy manufacturing and recycling projects category. The applicants should ensure that whatever they're proposing in terms of the derivative products meets the eligibility requirements under the clean energy manufacturing and recycling category. Okay. If I go to the next slide, the third category is industrial decarbonization projects. In round one, these were called greenhouse gas emission reduction projects. Under this category for round one, the projects that involve retrofitting an industrial or manufacturing facility are eligible. They must include an installation of equipment designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by at least 20%. That is the requirement that must be met to be eligible for under this, in addition to being a retrofit for an existing industrial or manufacturing facility. Under this category, the projects which are where the investments to expand a facility to increase a manufacturing capacity are not eligible. So if the project proposal includes expanding a facility and also installing equipment to reduce the GHG emissions by 20%, for projects which have that kind of a scope, any ineligible costs that are part of the overall project, they must be excluded from the qualified investment requested for projects within that category. That is an important thing to remember, to make sure that the scope of the investment for which the tax credit is requested includes only the eligible costs for the eligible proper project. Okay. If I can go to the next slide. Okay. So the next section would be the application process. Colleague Ali will cover the 48C application process for round two.
Thanks, Sarma. Yeah, so Sarma just walked through Appendix A, which summarizes eligibility, and I will walk through Appendix B, talking through the concept paper and application process at a high level, providing an overview of the concept paper templates and submission requirements for round two, giving an overview of how to register and submit an application or concept paper on the 48C portal, and the DOE review process. So similarly, in round one, round two will follow a two-stage application process for the 48C tax credit. This slide summarizes the overall kind of life cycle of a 48C application and project. So we're at the concept paper stage, and interested applicants must submit a concept paper to be able to submit an application. So encourage folks to do that. DOE reviews concept papers, and applicants after the DOE merit review receive a notification either encouraging or discouraging an application based on that merit review. The status at this stage does not limit whether or not someone can apply for 48C. So if a project receives a discourage letter from the Department of Energy, that applicant is still eligible to apply with that project for the full application stage for further consideration. Applicants then are expected to submit an application, which is roughly 35 pages, requiring more detail and information to substantiate the project. DOE reviews applications. And then a decision, DOE recommends allocation or denial to the IRS, and the IRS ultimately sends out and determines the final list of projects that are allocated or denied a 48C tax credit. And for projects that are successful and receive an allocation, the projects must be certified within 2 years of receiving the allocation, and then be placed in service within 2 years following certification. So all projects must be placed in service within 4 years of receiving a 48C tax credit allocation. This slide is really just meant to help folks orient themselves with the new guidance and understand what information is useful for developing a strong concept paper. So these are the key sections of guidance. Section 2.4 in Appendix B summarizes the concept paper guidance and expectations. Section 2.7 summarizes the technical review criteria, which are listed here. Section 8 discusses submission and registration information for applicants, and Section 9 describes the DOE recommendation process. The technical merit review criteria are the same as in round 1. So DOE will be evaluating based on commercial viability of the project's greenhouse gas emissions impacts, and then the extent the project strengthens U.S. supply chains and domestic manufacturing for a net zero economy, and obviously workforce and community engagement. So please review section 2.7 of the guidance. Concept papers will be evaluated based on the non-italicized bullets in those sections. There's a distinct section for clean energy manufacturing and critical materials projects, and a distinct section for industrial decarbonization projects. So please review the appropriate section based on which project category your project fits into. As we talked about, there is a new concept paper submission requirement. So applicants must submit one PDF template. There are currently 2 PDF templates available. They're available on the 48C portal for anyone who is already registered. It is in a knowledge article, and they're available on the 48C landing page with the link here. So there is a PDF that is available for critical materials and clean energy manufacturing projects, and a separate PDF for industrial decarbonization projects. So please select the appropriate PDF for you to fill in and submit as part of your submission requirement for a concept paper. Applicants are also expected to submit an Excel data sheet. There is one data sheet available also at these sites. There are specific sections within it based on the project type that you submit, so please submit and fill it out accordingly. And just to reiterate the concept paper submission window, and to reiterate the fact that in order to be able to submit an application, applicants must submit a concept paper by the deadline. So right now, applicants are able to get on the 48C portal and register. On May 22nd, next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern, applicants can start a 48C concept paper submission. And on June 21st at 5 p.m. Eastern time, applicants must submit concept papers by this deadline on the 48C portal. Just a quick summary and highlight of the 48C portal. We have resources available, and we can obviously take questions on this through our questions mailbox. But the DOE 48C portal is not the portal we used in the first round. In the first round, we used Exchange. So for anyone who's considering applying again, please be mindful of the fact that there is a new portal and there is a new identification system. So we use id.me instead of login.gov. Here's a quick summary of the process of submitting a concept paper on the new 48C portal. So applicants who have registered, set up an ID.me account and have logged in, will select the tax credits tab and then select the apply now button. If you're a new organization submitting, you'll select new organization. If you're an existing organization in the system, your organization will already be visible in the portal. Applicants are then expected to submit information for general facility information, contact information, key personnel information, and funding costs and documentation. And this includes uploading one PDF template that has been completed and the Excel data sheet. The applicant will then be prompted to verify their information and select submit, and then attest that their concept paper information is correct, and formally submit to DOE by 5 p.m. on June 21st. Here's a quick summary of the concept paper review process. So DOE will conduct a compliance and eligibility review, which considers whether or not the project meets the eligibility requirements that Sarma walked through previously. And then the technical review will review the 4 technical review merit criteria listed here, which I've discussed previously. And then applicants will receive a encourage or discourage notification through the 48C portal. So everything is on the 48C portal. Encourage folks to register and begin applications starting on May 22nd. Great. I think that's the end of Appendix B. I'm going to pass it to my colleague Zach Valdez to discuss the updates to Appendix C.
All right, thank you, Ali. I appreciate it. And thank you everybody for turning out for this webinar. We really appreciate it. And we are logging all the questions so that we can answer you in a formal frequently asked questions opportunity. If you can go to the next slide, we're really excited about the expansion of the 48C energy community. So looking at the map, the blue tracks are where the 2023 round one energy track communities existed, and we've actually expanded that to what you see there with the orange dots. This is not to denote specific sort of tax advice, but if you go to that Appendix C Notice 2024-36, that is the sole means by which we identify areas that are available for those energy community tax credits. So these are areas that have had coal mines closed since December 31st of 1999, or coal power plants that have closed since December 31st of 2009, as well as the census tracts immediately adjacent to either of the above. The important part about this is with the $10 billion that we received in the 48C funding, 40% of that needs to be dedicated to, at least 40% of that needs to be dedicated to these energy communities. And so with round two and the $6 billion that we have allocated for this round, at least $2.5 billion of that should be supported in those efforts. So we're really hoping that these energy communities can be strengthened and revitalized and leverage some of the existing infrastructure that is being put in place there. And with that, we will, as I said, take all your questions, and I will pass it back to Ali. Thank you.
I think Karma is going to provide an update on the guidance for developing a strong concept paper submission.
Okay. Thanks, Ali. If I can go to the next slide. Okay, so far we talked about the round two notice and the appendices. Every applicant is highly encouraged and required to read the round two guidance documents and put together an application, concept paper and application that meets the requirements in round two. In this section, based on what we saw in round one concept papers and applications, we tried to kind of put a few key messages out there. What makes a strong concept paper, and these concepts are extendable for full application also. As Julia and Matt mentioned earlier, 48C is a competitive merit review process to select the projects that we recommend for IRS allocation. And as we mentioned earlier, round one was highly subscribed, and that is where putting together a strong concept paper and application will be important. In terms of making putting together a strong concept paper, it should, going clockwise, it should include both the completed appropriate PDF template and data sheet with sufficient details for the merit reviewers to evaluate the merits of the concept paper and the project proposed to encourage that for full application stage. And like I mentioned earlier, it should include the costs that are eligible for inclusion in a qualified investment. That way we understand the scope of the project and the request for the tax credit. And as Ali mentioned and Matt mentioned earlier, under the 48C investment tax credits, after IRS makes the allocation decision, it has all applicants have 2 years to get the certification with the required permits and ready to start the construction, and an additional up to 2 years to complete the project construction and placed in service. So the concept papers and the applications that address the required timelines of how the project fits into the requirements of 48C would be helpful. And last but not least, the narrative and the information in the data sheets that are provided in the concept papers, they should effectively communicate and substantiate how the project meets the 4 merit review criteria. Okay. If I can go to the next slide. Okay. Continuing on the theme, a concept paper submissions that make strong concept papers. They would include sufficient detail, like I mentioned, whether it's the concept paper template and data sheets. For round 2, we streamlined the concept paper template and the data sheets to make it easy for the applicants and also for the merit reviewers, having sufficient detail to enable the merit reviewers and DOE to evaluate the applications would be very helpful there. Second one is the project that meets the criteria for eligible qualifying advanced energy project. Again, encouraged to read the notice and Appendix A and select the appropriate project category and the topic selected to fully defining how the proposed project would be eligible under the 48C round 2 guidance. The third one, like I mentioned, the proposed project should not include any investment that is not eligible for under 48C. And we already talked about the timelines, required timeframes for to be able to receive the 48C tax credits. The facilities should be placed in service within 4 years from the time of allocation. Okay. And the right side panel, you see the examples of the 4 merit review criteria. The first one is describing the likelihood of commercial viability of the proposed project. The guidance documents describe the elements of the commercial viability, whether it's a project plan or business plans and financing structures. So having a clear description of how the project is going to achieve the commercial viability would make it a strong concept paper. Similarly, describing the impacts on reducing greenhouse gas emissions because of the proposed project would be important. And the third merit review criteria, strengthening the US supply chains and domestic manufacturing, how the proposed project would address those goals and the merit review criteria. Fourth one, we will go into a little more detail, but describing the workforce benefits and the completed and proposed community engagement for the proposed project to meet the fourth merit review criteria of workforce and community engagement. So a concept paper which addresses these elements would make a strong concept paper in a competitive merit review process. On the 48C landing page and also on the IRS website listed below, we have a document on some of the common themes we identified in round 1 concept papers in terms of the general trends we saw in those concept papers from round 1, and that document can serve as an illustrative example for how to structure round two concept papers. Again, for round two concept papers, the governing documents are the IRS Notice 2024-36 and the associated appendices. Okay, if I can go to the next slide. So we talked about the technical merit review criteria. That's how the concept papers will be evaluated and discussed in making the encourage discourage notifications. Refer to the Appendix B of the notice 2024-36 for the complete list and the details of the technical merit review criteria. In section 2.7.1, you will see the criteria for clean energy manufacturing and recycling projects and critical material projects. For the industrial decarbonization projects, they are in section 2.7.2. Like I mentioned, the four merit review criteria are commercial viability, that talks about the project schedule and time from certification to completion, and strength of the proposed business plan, including the financing and offtake agreements. The second criteria, GHG emissions reduction, the end product GHG reductions and avoided emissions and cost of avoided emissions in the case of industrial decarbonization projects. The third criteria is the supply chain, strengthening the U.S. supply chains and domestic manufacturing, how the proposed project will fill the supply chain gap for the clean energy manufacturing and critical materials, and for the industrial decarb projects, inclusion of innovative and replicable technologies for decarbonization of those industrial sectors. Under the workforce and the community engagement criterion, job creation and workforce continuity, ensuring timely project completion through workforce and community engagement, energy community transition plans, and local environmental impacts are some of the sub-criteria listed in more detail in the guidance document. If I can go to the next slide. I think the next couple of slides, we'll talk a little more in detail on workforce and community engagement plans. A good workforce and community engagement plan, it would help in decreasing the project risks and delays due to the community or labor opposition. And it decreases health and safety risks to workers and communities. In addition to increasing the participation of affected stakeholders in the decision making for timely completion of the projects, and provides opportunities for two-way communication between the projects and the communities, and it increases the accountability to affected workers and communities where these projects are going to be allocated, and benefits. It increases the benefits and broadly shared prosperity from place-based projects. So these are some of the elements of a good workforce and community engagement plan to strengthen a concept paper. If you can go to the next page. These are some of the examples of what we saw in round one in terms of the workforce and community engagement commitments. Applicants should detail specific and actionable commitments, including planned or in progress and established activities, fully understanding that we are at the concept paper submission stage. Some of these details may not be available in the final form, but indicating where they are in the status would help in the merit review criteria. Some of the examples of effective commitments they include, but they're not limited to commitments to negotiate project labor agreements or honoring existing collective bargaining agreements, identification of benefits provided to affected stakeholders and local community, whether it's number of local jobs to be created and wages to be paid, timelines and remedies for non-compliance. Applicant clearly identifies the communities impacted by the project, either positive or negative, and how they're going to be addressed, including whether they're designated as disadvantaged communities by the different tools available. For 48C, the for energy communities definition, what Jack described, that is a very unique definition for 48C, and there is a statutory requirement of meeting at least 40% of the allocations to the 48C energy communities. Okay. That is different from the disadvantaged communities. If I can go to the next slide. Okay, so that is on what makes a strong concept paper. Like I mentioned, 48C is a competitive selection process, and these are meant to be examples of helping with a strong concept paper. If I can go to the next slide, to wrap up the webinar, 48C, round one, it is going to be it's going to be administered on the 48C portal from the concept paper submission to full application submission, and receive the allocation notifications from IRS. On 48C portal, the address is provided there, echo.gov, energy.gov/48C. On the 48C portal, the help center on the navigation bar has a lot of additional help resources, including FAQs, the applicant user guide, and other helpful information. And you will be able to access the help articles on different tasks that need to be done, like how to view the application status and decisions, and how to withdraw an application, and the applicant user guide will help on how to submit an application. And we will continue to add additional help articles to the portal to help with the application process. Okay. For additional programmatic information on the 48C program homepage, what we call the landing page, which has a lot of additional information on the 48C program and resources, including the copies of the notice, appendices, and the concept paper templates and data sheets, in addition to the information that we shared with public on round one, the previous notices, and the FAQs and the common themes we saw in round one. For technical support on 48C portal, please use contact us, and our team will be able to assist you with any technical questions or the programmatic questions. If I can go to the next slide. Okay. So some of the links that are helpful, like Ali mentioned earlier, these slides will be posted on the 48C landing page in the coming days. But the webinar content, the 48C portal is where all the administrative activities on the round two will happen, from registering as an applicant and submitting a concept paper, viewing the concept paper notifications, and submitting a full application, and all the way to seeing the IRS allocation notifications. If there are any questions or comments, please email 48cquestions@hq.doe.gov, where, based on the nature of the question, either the technical team or the program team will address and respond. For tax-related information, please refer to the IRS contact information in the updated guidance and visit the irs.gov website for additional details. One of the requirements for round 2 for access to Salesforce, the 48C portal, is registering with an ID.me account, and the help.idme would be a good way to kind of get any help, questions or comments related to the registration on ID.me so that the applicants can access the 48C portal and be able to submit and observe the progress of their application process. So that this is the final slide, but I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who participated in this webinar for round 2. And looking forward to receiving the concept papers and then later the full applications for round 2. Appreciate your time. Thank you.